Good morning, iPad development team. I'm curious if we can make the iPad even more pro. Absolutely, Tim. We've developed a next-generation Lightning port that is capable of handling 10 times the data transfer speed of the previous generation Lightning port that will allow the iPad to import more media files from more cameras and SD cards than ever before in a more efficient manner.
Wow.
That's so amazing that within the same form factor as the iPhone 5, you were able to make the port so much faster. Like, can't we put this on the iPhone? Oh, no, Tim, that would be so hard. Wait, why would that be hard? Oh, you'd have to, oh man, Tim, you'd have to put all of that electron inside the phone. That's just a lot of work, man. Okay, well, maybe in a couple years then we could, well, at least by the iPhone 14 we could probably have, Alrighty then, I guess the iPad can have it. Yeah, I get. We'll probably remove it next year, though. Wait, why? Yeah, we probably should have gone with USB-C from the beginning. See you then.
Wow.
That makes way too much sense. It's hard to believe that next month, the 10.5-inch iPad Pro, which is still getting some use in our household, will be turning 6 years old. Yes, there are a lot of children out there that probably have iPhones now, which are not as old as this iPad. But this was a substantial upgrade, in my opinion. This is the exact iPad Pro I unboxed on this channel all those years ago. It was a significant time for me for a lot of reasons, like it was the first month that I actually started doing YouTube videos full-time. I quit my day job, and then immediately went out and bought this. And still, to this day, I don't know why. I think I had some logic about wanting local storage because where I was living at the time, I didn't have good internet access, so I maxed out the storage, which means, yes, this is the 512 gigabyte variant. But it ended up paying off because this essentially has become a great external SSD with AirDrop support. So whenever our phones or iPads fill up with videos or pictures and we want to dump them on something else, this has way more storage than I ever utilized on it, and it supports AirDrop still. 6 years later, it's still running the latest version of iPadOS, which is honestly not that hard because iPadOS doesn't really do anything, especially with the old A10X chip, meaning that this iPad doesn't get a lot of those basic features like subject lift or live text similar to my iPhone 10. In fact, it's technically a generation behind my iPhone 10, which is kind of interesting because Apple didn't let any iOS devices with the A10 chip run iOS 16, but the A10X, they said, yeah, okay, that can run iPadOS 16. So we did get the weather app, which is really all that changed if you didn't have an M1 chip in your iPad. No Stage Manager or any of those things, but I have to say, this iPad has aged so gracefully. Even though I'm not really the one using it day to day, it's typically my wife's go-to iPad. It lives most of its life in the living room, and the reason I think it's aged so well is because this is the first Apple product that had ProMotion. The very second I laid eyes on it, I was immediately impressed by the buttery smoothness.
Oh my god, I noticed it. I noticed ProMotion. Oh my god. Oh, you guys were so right. You said that the refresh rate is noticeable.
That high refresh rate that was only available on the iPads at that time, and shockingly enough, it would not come to the iPhone until 2021, which was 4 years later, and then the MacBook Pro a month after that. But for 4 years, this was the only Apple product that had a refresh rate over 60 Hertz, and because it's still rocking that ProMotion display, it's just very hard for anything to feel sluggish or laggy, because every app you open is ready to go like that, and the animations are so smooth. Even though it's not technically faster than an iPad with 60 Hertz, it feels faster just because you're getting more of those individual frames as you're using it. And in doing some research for this video 6 years later, I realized that there's a lot of unique features that this thing has going for it, and it might even be worth considering buying in 2023 if you're in the market for an iPad and you're not willing to spend more than $300. Some of us are on super budgets like that, and I'm even willing to cave and admit that some people don't need iPads to be big fancy LumaFusion or DaVinci Resolve running machines, because if you really want to do video editing, you're probably going to want a MacBook for it. Some people just want a media consumption device that's bigger than their phone, has a nice display, has a good speaker system, and you can find these on Amazon Renewed or eBay Refurbished for low $200, which would undercut the iPad 9th generation, which I'm pretty sure at this point is still Apple's best-selling iPad. That's the only one with Lightning, which normally I don't recommend, but I will admit, if you're gonna have an iPad with Lightning, you might as well get the iPad with the fastest version of Lightning, which is so fascinating about about this generation. It actually started in 2015 with the first ever 12.9-inch iPad Pro. That's when Apple started shipping Lightning 3.0, which doesn't sound that different from Lightning 2.0, which is still what even the iPhone 14 Pros are rocking to this day. But the data transfer speed is actually quite significant. Lightning 3 offers nearly 10 times the data transfer speed as Lightning 2, and they put it on that original 12.9-inch iPad Pro, but they did not put it on the 2016 9.7-inch iPad Pro. I don't know why. Must have been a cost-cutting measure. I still am upset that they decided to have two sizes of the Pro iPad. I thought they should have left it simple with the big iPad as Pro and the small iPad as the Air, but once this one came out with the 10.5-inch variant, that's when they started including Lightning 3 with the smaller size, which was a lot more reasonable for people because that 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the big forehead and chin was just gargantuan. It was huge. And I even bought the Lightning to SD card adapter back when I was editing videos on this channel purely off of my 2015 iPad Pro. Long before we had LumaFusion, long before we had cursor support or the Magic Keyboard case. No, that was back when I just had an Apple Pencil, first generation, and iMovie, and I could get the basics done for video editing. So forgive me for not being immensely impressed by the video editing performance of the M2 iPad Pro. I was doing that stuff 8 years ago. But for this time, another groundbreaking spec that this thing was rocking was the A10X chip. This was the first time TSMC was manufacturing 10 nanometer architecture, and they put it on the iPad Pro before anything else because I think they were really trying to convince people to spend more money on the iPad. And by showing off the performance capabilities and standardizing the faster Lightning connector, I think they were really starting to push people to use this as more so of a tool, less so of just a media consumption device. And that ProMotion enabled the stylus support to be extra low latency, and at that time it was not very common for tablets or even laptops to have refresh rate that high and actually have battery life this good. You know, typically if you had a gaming PC with over 120 hertz, then the battery life was going to be 30 to 40 minutes, in which case it's not really a laptop at that point. It's just a slightly more mobile desktop. But the A10X, I think, was kind of the prelude to the Apple Silicon transition away from Intel, because once Apple started shipping the A10X chip in iPads, people started saying, okay, wait a minute, there are iPads now which are cheaper than MacBooks, but they're actually performing better, at least in terms of Geekbench scores, than what Intel-based MacBook Airs were doing at that time. Part of it, sure, was that 2017 was not a great year for Intel and MacBook performance because of all the thermal throttling issues and stuff, but the writing was starting to come on the wall once Apple released the A10X chip and people realized, hey, this thing is pretty freaking fast and doesn't have any fans, and it's consuming a fraction of the energy of what these MacBooks are using, and it's still able to get some pretty freaking awesome performance out of it. So that was kind of a game changer. And the other unique one that Apple actually got rid of on the 2018 iPad Pro was they beefed up the cameras on this thing, so it has the same front and rear facing camera as the iPhone 7, but that also included the optical image stabilization on the rear facing camera. So unfortunately, the A10X could not record at 4K at 60, but it could record at 4K, and I just found it impressive that they could fit optical image stabilization, so if you're recording video on the iPad, it does look very stable. And then for whatever reason, on the 2018 model, they decided, no, we don't want to fit that anymore. Maybe they decided that when you're holding a tablet this big, you don't really notice optical image stabilization that much, but I thought it was worth mentioning a few of the unique features that this iPad had going for it before they changed so much with the big update in 2018. The other perk of these generation iPads that I still think makes them a better deal over just buying a modern day iPad 9, not just the ProMotion display, not just the bigger display, but also these still have quad speakers. So when you're playing videos or music on them, you're getting sound from this side and this side, whereas the iPad 9, it still technically has like stereo speakers, but they're both on the same side. So if you're using it in landscape, you're just gonna get audio on the right side or just the left side, whereas this, you get them on both. And a lot of people may not know this, but the 10.5-inch iPad Pro actually has the thinnest bezels of any iPad ever, if we're just referring to the side bezels, okay? So yes, the 2018 iPad Pro definitely looks more immersive because they scrapped the home button and you have the same size bezel all the way around, but if we're just talking about these side bezels here, they actually got thinner on this iPad than even what the 2018 iPad Pros get. And so far, Apple has not beat the bezel thickness of the 2018 iPad Pro. So as far as how thin can a side bezel get for an iPad, this is essentially as good as it gets. And because we're reviewing a lot of older tech on this channel now, I finally did it. People have been asking for me to do it for a while. I finally got the Coconut Battery app for Mac and checked the battery health on this 10.5-inch iPad Pro 6 years later, and I was actually pretty impressed. It's sitting at a little over 81% battery health, which for 6 years of usage, honestly, that's like really impressive. Normal battery degradation would be around 10% per year, so I expected it to be far below 80%. Sadly, I have to get the Coconut battery app because Apple does not put battery health settings on iPadOS. Even if you have an M2 iPad Pro, you can't access that data. Very annoying, very confusing as to why they still don't do that, but it also had a pretty easy life. It's only sitting a little over 300 cycles, so it's not getting that much rigorous usage, but still occasional media consumption from my wife as kind of the living room couch tablet. It's good for reading books, it's good for watching videos, reading the news, checking email, Duolingo, even some light gaming on there as well. So in my opinion, quite a few advantages over what the $300 iPad 9 is offering, but the main disadvantages of buying an iPad this old is, of course, the software support is likely somewhat limited. It probably will get iPadOS 17, but I could be wrong on that one, and it very likely will not get iPadOS 18, so if you're hoping to just get the latest software support and security patches, that's definitely a downside here, but in my opinion, based on how Apple is software locking out a lot of features from the older iPads, even iPads from just 2020 did not get Stage Manager or external monitor support, and they're not even that old, so even if you are comparing like iPad 9 versus 10.5-inch iPad Pro, yeah, I still don't think there's that many software features that the iPad 9 is gonna get that this won't. The obvious ones I can think of are Subject Lift, if you care about that, or Live Text, or Apple Music Sing, because I'm sure all of you are singing it along with those karaoke machines. Because the A10X chip doesn't actually have neural cores, it's not capable of running those sophisticated advanced algorithmic features like Apple Music Sing. But honestly, I don't think most people use their iPads in that way. So in my view, if you just want something with a buttery smooth, high refresh rate display, better rear-facing camera than the iPad 9, faster lightning port if you do want to transfer data off of it and use it like an external SSD like we have, both of them are stuck with the Apple Pencil 1, which I think we can all acknowledge is inferior to the Apple Pencil 2, but this is for people on kind of an ultra budget for their iPad. If you're willing to spend more than $300, I'm just going to tell you to buy a renewed iPad Air 4 with USB-C or a 2018 iPad Pro anyway, because those are clearly superior hardware. But this, I think, was an interesting chapter in Apple's history. It's the last time the iPad Pro had the home button, it's the last time it had the headphone jack, and you can find them for pretty cheap, and in my opinion, the A10X is still faster than what a lot of people expect for an iPad, considering how limited iPadOS continues to keep the hardware. So, to me, this is the generation where the iPad hardware started to outpace the software by a pretty wide margin, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. If you owned this generation or a different generation iPad that you think is more underrated, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you all in the next one.